Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you on The Big Picture. We will take you through very closely, taking a look at one of the big stories of the day. Today, of course, we're taking a look at the big international story, which is the election results in Turkey. For the first time since 2002, Recep Tayyip Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, also known as AKP, of course, did win the elections. However, not a majority, and perhaps for the first time, maybe going in for a coalition government. That's something that Turkey is, of course, looking at very closely. We're looking at closely here. We've got a eminent panel of guests joining us this evening. We've got WHS Awwad, who's, of course, the South Asia Bureau Chief of Al Arabiya, joining us. Thank you so much for being here. We've got senior journalist Seema Guha with us this evening, and former Ambassador MK Bhadrakumar as well. And also AK Mohapatra, who's a professor at the Center for West Asian Studies at JNU, also joining us in studio. If I could come to you first, Mr. Awwad, a report actually calling this a nuclear explosion in Turkish politics. Would you agree to that?
Well, I think it is a new era, no doubt about it, that it is a jolt has been given to the Erdogan ambitions to be the Zia ul-Haq of Turkey, and it has really have a big impact on his future, because if he has to go from a two-third majority into now going into a coalition in the parliament, that means a clear indication that the people of Turkey are not happy with his policy regarding many of the issues, especially when the slowing down of the economy now and the neighboring country intervention in Syria and other stories that have really led down to the less popular among his people. I just came back, actually I was there last week in Turkey. I could sense it in the street in different cities of Turkey, and the population are not happy with the changes, and you could see more of the Islamization of Turkey, which has also affected large secular outfit in Turkey. They felt that they have been declined, and the Ataturk secular Turkey is losing its luster and its credential being a secular country. So all these indications really have put, it is a jolt, it is a U-turn, you can say. Still he is the winning, the party is having the largest number, but that gives you the indication what could be the kind of relation between the president and the prime minister, and what kind of compromise will be to get the majority in the parliament that they have to rule.
Yes, Ms. Guha, we are talking over Erdogan, and he, of course, had wanted these sweeping powers, and that, of course, is going to take a jolt, like Mr. Awwad, of course, pointed out. Give us a sense, really, about the international vote, because a lot of votes that came in from outside were a lot of it for the pro-Kurdish party, who's actually performed really well, the HDP.
And for the first time.
Yes, and for the first time, not just, they were, of course, needed a 10% vote, but they've got 13%.
Absolutely.
And now they're going to be having quite a big standing there in Parliament.
I think that is a real welcome change, and that all these things will make a difference. And naturally, there are lots of Kurds outside the country who all voted. I feel very strongly that this is really good to have the Kurds inside Parliament to raise their voices. And you know how happy people are all over the place. So I think, and the Kurds outside, naturally, they would vote for the Kurdish party. And I hope this is something that there'll be more and more representatives in Parliament later. I mean, in future elections.
All right. We'll, of course, speak of what could be the permutation combinations that we could probably be seeing as far as now, as the weeks go on. 45 days they do have to eventually come up with a kind of solution or call another election. But Mr. Bhadrakumar, if I could ask you, in terms of Erdogan's global popularity, he's been associated with the IEA, a very important organization. But for the past, since 2002, he's been solely into Turkish politics. Give us a sense, really, as far as how India is probably viewing him, how the US probably views him, and could this actually make a change in how people view him at the moment as a ruler of Turkey?
No, as an Indian, I can, first of all, I can observe that India's views are inconsequential there. United States, yes, it's a major partner for, it's an anchor sheet of, it used to be traditionally the anchor sheet of Turkish foreign policy. And Erdogan's independent foreign policies, from his point of view, his country's point of view, that had upset powerful interest groups in the West, especially the Israeli lobby. And therefore, you find a barrage of criticism about Erdogan over the last 2 to 3 year period, especially from 2013, when he began dealing with Hamas from that time onward, and his dalliance with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
That has completely upset the Israelis and others, and that has been there. Now, but I want to revisit the result, if you permit me.
Yes, yes.
You know, I was ambassador there, and you know, what we really do not understand often is that there are very strange characteristics of the Turkish electoral system. You must understand what was the alchemy of Erdogan's brutal majority of 50% in the last election. He polled somewhere around this only. But the Turkish law, electoral law, is that if a political party contests and doesn't cross the 10% threshold, its votes are handed over to the ruling party and gets reflected in its strength. So now what has happened is, if you really look at it as a vote by secular Turkey and so on, it doesn't make sense because the votes didn't gravitate towards Turkey's main secular opposition party, which is the CHP. Its vote share in 2011 election was 25%, and now it is 25.3%. In fact, 3.5% from Erdogan's loss has gone to another right Islamist party called the MHP. And the balance is what is brought in the Kurds. Now, this is where that is the crux of the matter. There has been a kind of a shift in the calculus of power in the Turkish electoral political scene. So what has happened is, in the last election, a lot of HDP people, that is the Kurdish regional party people, voted for Erdogan. Now they have gravitated back, which is why Istanbul has rejected Erdogan's party. Istanbul is a Kurdish majority city, which people do not know. And Istanbul has voted against him. So the Kurds have gone to HDP. Now, why did they go to HDP? Because it is Erdogan, in all of Turkish 7-8 decades of history, who has offered some meaningful overture to the Turkish community for accommodation. So the Turkish aspiration today is to see that for the first time historically, HDP is present in the parliament as a coalition partner of the AKP, Erdogan's party, so that by helping Erdogan to have constitutional reform, as a quid pro quo, they can negotiate Kurdish autonomy.
You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Something like that.
That is what has happened. In fact, you know, you must see this, that after 12 years in power, and after all this barrage of criticism, his support base is still 40%, which in a functioning democracy is no small matter.
Absolutely. If I could come to you, Mr. Mohapatra, give us a sense really of what did you make of these elections? Was it in the coming, like Mr. Bhadrakumar has been saying, it was in the offing, the indications were so. Since you do look at West Asian studies closely, give us a sense of what did you feel of those elections?
See, this election would be a turning point, so for this modern Turkish political history concerned, in a way. It's a repeat of what happened in the 1980s, particularly later half of 1980s, marked by the rise of the great charismatic Turkish leader, Turgut Özal. He rose like this, his great ANAP party, motherland party, subsequently became president, dominated these Turkish political scenes for about two decades. Then he died when he was in office as the president. Similar things more or less was awaiting for Tayyip Erdogan. His party was essentially breakaway of these Islamist party. It's called the Islamic Salvation Party, which was banned several times, led by Professor Erbakan. And his constituency, very rightly Bhadrakumar pointed out, more or less has remained intact. But the problem here is, you see, this Erdogan is considered more as a polarizing political actor, a character in Turkish politics. And there's something called Turkey experienced a kind of war at home, complete polarization between 50-50. Last time he won the presidential election by a margin of 51%. So another 50% is considered to be opposed to him, or largely representing the secular, faction of Turkish political community. So in between, you have the Kurdish factor. Yes, true. He went a long way from recognition of the so-called Kurdish reality to act towards the kind of giving Kurdish cultural autonomy. This definitely did create a kind of space for the Kurdish people living last in southeastern part of Turkey. But that itself is not enough. They have been demanding some kind of recognition, thereby by implications, changing the monoethnic character of Kemalist state. That non-recognition of Kurds means retaining the Turkishness of Turkey created by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk way back in 1923. Whether all other political parties are prepared to accept it, that is multi-ethnicity. That's a real challenge to all the political actors of Turkey today, and this is the challenge which lies ahead, regardless of which party leads the coalition government in the next 45 days.
And talking of those challenges ahead in the days to come, what do we see, Mr. Awwad? What do you see as far as, do we see a coalition government for the first time in 12 years actually being enforced there in Turkey?
Well, I think there are talks of kind of a coalition government now, but some of the party also called that if we fail to form a government, let's call for an early election. In any case, it is a political message to Erdogan and to his party that now it is the time of compromise. But I would also see the worries for the Turkish future. That's why I started with Ziaul Haq mentioning it, is because the way the Erdogan has driven the country into the Islamization and also allowing it to be a proxy, a war of passage of terrorists from their territories into Syria, opening 900 kilometers and letting every mercenaries getting into the state. It is a clear indication that this is superimposed on the future of Turkey. And he is not understanding correctly the heterogeneous of the society, how it is divided. So once you have already played with the devil, you have to bear him in your backyard. So there is a question of political stability in Turkey at stake. And maybe not at this stage, but I think it is that since 2002 till date, yes, it is a big change for the government. And that will set up the stage. Because if Erdogan, you remember when he started his campaign in 1993, he held his ring in his hand and he said, this is what I owe. And then now we see that he is among the 10 most richest men in the world. Yes. So that's a clear indication that what you are applying is what you did is not what you breach.
Absolutely. All right. That's one of the interesting anecdotes actually of Erdogan that we've been reading as well. Ms. Guha, just give us a sense, like we're pointing out, of course, a coalition government, but in today's world, especially since 2002, there's a lot more focus, especially in the region, what with the Syria there, what with the crisis that's going on in Ukraine. The markets fell badly today. Lira is seeing the record fall. All these factors, do you think that will also push Erdogan to, to probably say, let's just go for coalition. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it safe for now.
No, I'm sure that is a major, I mean, anyone who's in control of government will want to see stability. And anyway, he has got the maximum amount. It is the largest single party.
41% last counted.
41%, and he just needs, how many does he need? How many more seats?
Needs about 13 seats more.
About 13 seats more. So I'm sure there'll be a coalition. And I'm sure they don't want instability in the region. And as he was pointing out, the economy and everything matters. And so I'm sure he will try to really form a government instead of holding elections again, because you don't know what might happen again.
All right.
So I feel he will go in for a coalition.
Okay. Mr. Bhadrakumar, give us a sense of the other factors that, yes, we do have this, this sweep of change towards, non-autocracy, what you're seeing, of course, against Erdogan. But apart from that, any other factors that you think went in favor of the HDP especially? What do you see as, perhaps going towards that route?
On the ideological plane, it is a confirmed fact that Turkey has shifted to the right of center. The right-wing forces have been on the ascendancy, and it's very well established now. Because if you take the two main parties now on the right, that is Erdogan's party and the party called MHP, which is an Islamist light plus nationalistic. Now, both together, they really are overlapping. Together, 40 plus 16.5 is 56.5%. And the secularist party, which is the Kemalist party, is reduced to 25%. And then there is a regional party. Now, you see, for instance, it is there is a pronounced shift to the right. And this is, I think, irreversible. And this accounts for the solid chunk of 40% constituency that Erdogan's party is holding. Now, therefore, whenever in whichever way we look at it into the future, we have to look back. We cannot look back and say that there is any going back on this process which began in 2002. Whether we like it or not, Turkey has redefined its identity. And it is an Islamist identity. And it is an identity which is on economic, social policies and so on. It is an identity which is to the right of center ideologically. Now, we may berate against it, we may criticize it, we may reject it, saying this is not the Turkey we would like to have. But that's what the Turkish people seem to prefer. So we must understand that look at it from, let's try to look at it from the Turkish prism. So then, to answer your question, what accounted for the Kurdish? Ironically, Erdogan has stoked the fires of the Kurdish aspiration. For the first time, the leader of a mainstream political party began talking seriously with the Kurds about the parameters of autonomy and their identity in a multicultural society. The Turks were in a denial mode for nearly 7 centuries, and for the first time, a national figure, a prime minister, began talking about it, acknowledging that this is a multicultural society.
Yes.
So therefore, the Kurdish aspirations, that the fires have been stoked, and they feel that if they create an independency with Erdogan's party, their moment has come. Then, of course, a number of other lateral figures worked into it, Arab Spring and so on and so forth. And in terms of, national identities, nationality questions boiling in neighboring Syria, in Iraq and so on, that also worked on, to answer your question on what, but primarily I think their politics is to create an interdependency with the main party, which has shown a certain degree of willingness to accommodate them in a plural society, and then to bargain with them. So they will see what Erdogan wants. What does Erdogan want? He wants Turkey to move from a parliamentary system of government into a presidential system. Erdogan wants to be an executive president.
Yes.
That's a small price for the Kurds to pay, provided they get regional autonomy for the southeastern regions of Turkey. So there you have the answer to a number of questions. What coalition government is in the making?
Yes.
What is in the future?
Yes. We don't know what is going to be the HDP's role eventually, but one person who's, of course, the hero of the day, Mr. Mohapatra, and we have to talk about him. In fact, people are calling him the Kurdish Obama, Selahattin Demirtas. I hope I'm getting that name right. Yes, Demirtas. Yeah, give us a sense of his role that he had to play in this, 13% of a share that the HDP has now got. Give us a sense of, what kind of a person he is, or perhaps the party in itself. How significant was his role?
It's difficult for me. I never met him. So to know, he's just this much I know. He's 42-year-old and he's a product of the Ankara University
but like his
in Turkey.
role in general and the party's role in general. Yes.
Ironically, when I read the statement, he says it's the victory of the quote-unquote left. You see, left is something anathema in the political terminology of Turkey. You see, there's a times all kinds of left literature is completely banned. Like you don't easily get any book written by Lenin or Marx, because Marxism was always synonymous or identified with the Slavism or Slavic imperialism represented by Russia and subsequently Soviet Union. So that apart, see, this question is not so easy to resolve that we, as being an Indian, we think it's relatively easy. It is not. These are very interrelated issues and quite complex. Yes, on the one hand, you have a Turkish state which is created by Ataturk, an identity also manufactured is an artificial construct. People living in Anatolia was given a name as Turk, and their historical link is also invented, connecting Anatolian Turks to the Central Asia near the Turks living around Baikal Lake. At the same time, creating a Turkey which should be secular, 99% population happen to Muslims. So on the one hand, Erdogan represents an ideology which is anti-Kemalism, trying hard to reverse secularism, the founding principle of modern Turkish Republic. Thereby, he comes close to what my friend said, Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan. It's true. And thereby, Turkey, since the rise of Erdogan, has ceased to be a model for many Muslim countries in the world, has ceased to be a model, what used to be touted as a model. Second, at the same time, you have these recognition of multiplicity or the multi-ethnic society. extremely difficult. You have the Alawis, ethnically different from the Sunni Muslims, and we have the overlapping identity of Alawis and Sunnis who happen to be Kurds, is an ethnic category. So it's a very complex situation, and if you say the Kurdish aspirations, which to an extent also recognized by Turgut Özal before the 1980s, in the wake of the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein attack on northern Iraq. But today what has happened is, you have a kind of aspiration among the Kurdish minority spread all over, especially fueled by the rise of ISI and the capture of Mosul by the Iraqi Kurds. That in a way created a kind of expectation of the Kurds living in that particular region, that eventually the time has come for them to realize the long-sought goal of independent, unified Kurdistan, which would include a large chunk of Turkish territory as well. And that steers the fear among the Turkish nationalists, represented by the MHP, or the Turkish Nationalist Party, led by Davutoglu. So to what extent Davutoglu is prepared to go or climb down, so far his strict nationalist position is concerned, in order to create a relatively stable government by joining hands with AKP, that remains to be seen. So it's difficult to predict at this stage whether MHP, Nationalist Party and AKP together could form a government, and if at all they form a government, whether it would last long, given the challenge posed by the rise of HDP, People's Democracy Party, largely supported by the Kurdish minority, who constitute around 20% of Turkish population today.
Very quickly also, Mr. Awwad, if you could give us a sense of how the neighbours, Turkey's neighbours, how are they viewing these developments?
Well, I think it is too early for the neighbor to really come up with the reaction, because you see, Turkey policy, I mean, lots of credit also goes to Erdogan policy in the economic fronts for the last 13 years. One has to give him the credit for the infrastructure, for the economy, for generating of jobs and all. I mean, thanks to the Saudis and the Qatari money also, which is pumped into his coffin. So, and then you had now the neighboring country like Syria, we are only suffering in Syria because of him.
Yes.
There is no other reason. I mean, his zero tolerance among the neighbor, it becomes a kind of all problem with the neighbors. Whether it is you take it Armenia, you take it Syria, you take with the Russia, you take with the West, it is always a problem. But I would come back to also what Ambassador Bhadrakumar have mentioned. It's a very important if we look at the tactical gain and the strategic thinking. What the ambassador has mentioned, very important point, the rise of the right wing. It's not only in Turkey, by the way, it's all in Europe. So this is a clear indication that the social unrest will also increase into those countries. So if the gaining party of 12.87% of the Kurdish have gained on the ground, then the implication for the future of integrity of Turkey definitely is at stake. That's my point I'm taking in this.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining me here and giving us a sense of really what is it that we'll be seeing as far as Turkey is concerned in the next few days, and for that matter for years to come. There is, of course, a right-wing shift is what we're being told. That is something we are seeing, of course, in Europe, as Mr. Awwad is pointing out. We'll, of course, here on Rajya Sabha TV be giving you updates on really how day by day the scene is, of course, changing there in Turkey. But thank you so much for joining us. You're watching The Big Picture. The news follows after this quick break. Do stay with us.